Hello, and welcome to another edition of Mr. Daily Grace, a daily devotional to help you make it through the day, start your day, end your day, however you want to use it. We pray that the Lord will bless you with a rich blessing as you use this daily devotional to help you in your life. Over the last two videos, we've been talking about the Ten Commandments. We've covered the first three, which are have no other gods before me, make no graven images and worship them, and don't take the Lord's name in vain. And then we studied the fourth commandment, which is pertaining to the Sabbath. And those four commandments deal directly with our relationship to God, how we worship Him, how we behave toward Him, and how we should honor Him. But the last six commandments deal specifically with how we should relate to each other as brothers in the flesh. Not only as brothers in the flesh, but as relationships that come through marriage. So I want to read those last six commandments to you. I'm reading from the New King James, and they're in Exodus chapter 20, starting with verse 12. I'm going to read them through, and then we'll go through and break them down one by one. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Okay, so those are the last six commandments. Now, the very first one of those six is honor your father and your mother. This is a very interesting commandment because, not interesting in the sense that it's saying honor your father and your mother, because this should be something that should be something natural to us, a respect for those who bore us, for those who took the responsibility of raising us, for those who were responsible for our actions until we were responsible for them ourselves. So it should be a normal and natural response to honor our parents. Unfortunately, in society today, for whatever reason, whether it's that children are not being mothered properly or fathered properly, or if it's external influences like media, or if it's relationships with other children and other families, whatever the reason, that's not the discussion here. The reason that would influence children to not honor their parents, it's pervasive today. I have been in grocery stores and seen teenagers just outright curse at their parents. Children who disobey them in front of everybody else, knowing that they're disobeying them, and even seeing that their parents are disappointed or angry, and continuing on in that behavior. It's very dishonoring. And when you get up older into life, you see children that abandon their parents, or that mistreat them, or that steal from them. This is all dishonoring to our parents. And it's a very pervasive thing in our society. Now, that said, there's an additional part to this verse that isn't in any other commandment. There is a promise attached to this commandment. The commandment says, honor your father and your mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God has given you. This is a principle that I'm sure meant a lot to the Israelites as they were coming into the promised land after 400 years in captivity and 40 years in the desert wandering around. And they're coming into the promised land, and God says to them, honor your father and your mother so that the land that I give you, you can possess and live long on. I don't think that that principle only exists for Israel. It makes sense. It makes kind of a common sense to me. that if you honor your parents, there's going to be a dynamic that exists between you that is going to improve the quality of your life. It may not be as independent as you would like, and your life may not be as carefree as you would like, because as your parents get older, they require more and more attention, just like children. And the older they get, the more childlike attention you have to give them. And I can tell you right now, I'm dealing with that in my own life. It is very trying sometimes, but by God's grace, I'm learning to do it better, and I know that I'm going to be needing to do it more. So I'm preparing myself to be more parental in my relationship with my mother than I've ever been. And of course, if you see a mother who is raising a child, a loving mother who's raising a child, they are extremely patient, they are extremely perceptive, and they're almost everything that they do interacting with that child is for the benefit and enhancement of that child's life. This is the way that we need to be looking at that commandment. Honor your father and your mother. Now, moving on, there are some very absolute commandments that come up next. The next one is, you shall not murder. Now, I've been in lots of discussions about this commandment, and in my faith, we choose the path of non-combativeness. So, in other words, if we join the military, we want to seek out roles that are non-lethal roles, such as medics or doctors or nurses, that we can provide services to those who are injured, who are hurt, who are in need, without having to go out and kill. That said, I'm not actually certain that it is the same thing to kill for the defense of your family, your homeland, your country, and murder. I don't know that they're the same thing. And this has been the debate, and I'm not trying to make that decision here. I think that decision has to be made by each individual between them and God. What does that mean to them? However, it is very certain that the commandment does mean do not murder. In other words, honor and respect the life of others. Do not murder. You can't. It's really kind of a non-argument commandment. I think that the plain English is enough, but we've expounded on that plenty already. Let's just say that's what it is. Do not murder. The next one is do not commit adultery. Now, the Bible has a lot to say about adultery. It actually spells out what adultery is. And adultery is any kind of sexual intercourse with anyone or anything other than your spouse. Now, Jesus actually took that commandment and made it broader. And the way he made it broader was he said, hey, look, you think that committing adultery is just committing a sexual act physically. But I'm telling you, if you actually think about it in your head, if you think about that sexual act, you are actually committing adultery already. I actually find that very, very interesting, because what it does is it especially for men, because men are driven chemically through their sexual thought. We have to be praying constantly that God will protect us from allowing our minds to drift into that realm. And there's a lot of damage that is done just through the mental act of adultery. It's something that if we don't curb it, if we don't control it, it begins to control us. And that just creates a domino effect. And eventually you'll find that it will manifest itself in a physical manner. And then you're gone all the way already. But now it's gone from a mental act to an actual physical act. And their damage is absolute. There is no escaping damage whenever the act of adultery is committed, either mentally or physically. And I say mentally, the damage is usually psychological. And it may seem very small, but those small things add up and over time become problems. So this counsel is very, very important, not only for the health of the people involved, but also for the health of the relationships involved. There's nothing more damaging to a relationship than a matter of distrust. And when distrust makes its way into the relationship, it takes a long time to pave that over and eliminate that problem. It can be done, but there's a consequence. And so God's counsel here is very, very, very good. Do not commit adultery, either mentally or physically. The next one is do not steal. Now, I know how I feel about things that I own, that are mine. When somebody steals something from me, I feel violated. Sometimes I'm not even so angry that somebody else took it. I'm more angry that I lost it. And I don't want to get retribution against that person for taking it. I really want to have my property back. So in honoring somebody else, if I steal from them, I am doing a tremendous dishonor to them. So this stealing issue, even though a person might want something from somebody else, to steal it is to dishonor that other person and to dishonor yourself. Because at that point, once you've been found out, the view of you before others diminishes to almost nothing. A thief, in many cultures, a thief doesn't last very long. If they're caught, they're convicted and executed on the spot. Even in this country, in the early days of this country, a horse thief didn't last very long. If he got caught, he was probably dead within an hour. So stealing is another one of those commandments. The next one is thou shalt not bear false witness. Now, this is a really, really important commandment. And especially for those of us who have studied the persecution that happens because of one's faith. It is a very frightening thought. I mean, Jesus himself was falsely accused, and there were witnesses that falsely identified statements that he said or acts that he committed against him. But that isn't unique to Jesus' case. False witnesses have been pervasive throughout history. Whenever somebody wanted something or something to happen to someone else bad enough, one of the tools that they used was a false testimony. I happen to believe that as Christians, in the recent past, in the not so recent past, and today even, there's a lot of Christians that are being falsely accused because somebody disagrees with their faith and wants to eliminate them. So they will falsely accuse them of something, and hopefully that will remove them from the scene. In the future, towards the end of time, I believe that we're going to see a lot of persecution that's going to be based on that kind of false testimony. Anyway, in this verse, we're counseled not to bear false witness, and that makes perfect sense. And the last of these 10 commandments is not to covet. Now, God's very specific in this, and I want to read it again, how he delineates coveting, or what not to covet. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. This commandment is actually describing a principle. There are people who have, and there are people who have not. And those who have not generally want more. Of course, those who have also want more. The difference is that those who have not generally want what others have. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong. I would like to have some things that others have. I don't want theirs, which is the problem. Coveting is I want what you have specifically. I want what you own, that particular item. I don't want to have something like that. I want that one. That is coveting. And this is what this council is about. When the Ten Commandments were given to the children of Israel, there were all kinds of people in this very, very confined group. There were servants who had absolutely nothing, who actually belonged to somebody else. There were those who knew more, had more, and there were the rich. So just like today in our society, where we have a very broad spectrum of different economical strata, in Israel that existed as well, and it basically exists in most societies. Now there are societies where, like in the caste system, like in India, where there's not generally much of a middle class. How that's fast disappearing. It was easy, or it was common, for somebody to desire something that somebody else had. And if there weren't any rules to govern their behavior, they would do whatever it is they wanted to do. We see that in societies today. When our people are not taught what is right and what is wrong, they do whatever it is on their heart. And if they want something, they take it. That's what this is talking about. Whatever belongs to somebody else belongs to somebody else. Honor them by respecting that. The second part of this principle is that God provides all of our needs. And if we're trying to take what belongs to somebody else, we're not trusting God to provide for us. That's the second part of this principle. The Ten Commandments in general are not set aside to stop us from living. Rather, they are a way for us to live. They're not trying to tell us, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do the other. What the Ten Commandments are trying to tell us is, this is what life is really like. And if all of you live like this, there's going to be peace, there's going to be harmony, there's going to be long life amongst all of you. So when we look at the Ten Commandments, we shouldn't look at them as a set of laws that are meant to keep us down. Unfortunately, so many people look at them as the don'ts. And even though they are structured in, don't do this and don't do that, they're really meant to allow us to do everything in life that is right. Everything in life that promotes love. Everything in life that promotes peace. Those things that are pointed out there in the Ten Commandments that are don'ts are those kinds of things that would destroy all of them. Those kinds of things that would limit our ability to grow in relationship, our ability to grow in social strength, our ability to grow in wealth. Those kinds of things are negative to a good life. So the Ten Commandments are really meant for good and not for bad. My friends, I hope that you've gleaned something from this series on the Ten Commandments. I know that I always love talking about them, and I know that every time I talk about them, I learn a little bit more. In one of my prior videos, I mentioned that God said about these commandments, He said to always talk about them. Talk about them when you are walking on the street. Talk about them when you're in your home with your family. Talk about them when you sit down to eat a meal. Talk about them whenever you get an opportunity. And the reason He said that was because He wanted us to put them to memory. And when you put them to memory, they become part of you. So I invite you, put those 10 commandments to memory. Learn what they are. They will improve your life and improve the lives of those around you. I hope that you've gleaned something from this today. I pray that the Lord bless you and keep you, that He bless you with every physical and spiritual blessing, and that He protect you from all harm. Amen.